Well, I'd like to thank the grace of heaven, the virtue of our masters, our predecessor, the mercy of our predecessors and transmitter, grand predecessor, predecessors, and transmitters for me to have this opportunity to present the class on vows and the law of cause and effect. I think that was the title you gave me.
Karma.
Oh, vows and karma, which is the law of cause and effect. Okay. Yeah, I think. Have we done this before in a Dharma class? This class?
No,
Not typically. I know we have law, karma or something like that. We had talked about that before. Okay, but anyway, actually, I started working on it late this week, but nevertheless, I found it kind of fairly interesting when I was researching more about karma and also what they have presented, which is later on will be brought up in this topic in this class. The what they call it dependent origination. Okay, some fancy wording over there, but really just in one sense, it's kind of, if you look at it, it can be kind of simple, but on the other hand, it's not really that simple. Okay, so since this class actually is also including vows, I'll talk. The title is supposed to be vows and karma, I believe, right? That was what you wrote.
Yeah. The idea is the relation between.
Yeah, right. Vows and karma. So even though the title says vows first, I'm going to talk about karma first because vows sort of like it's related to karma, but I'll talk about that at the end. Okay. So this class ends at
11:30.
11:30. Okay, so 50 minutes. Okay.
So she don't have to do.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I don't know. You know, I've told my lecturer brother that, you know, once I said, you know, the higher you go up, the less you should talk. You know, and I really believe that. So I shouldn't talk that much. But this is a class, so this is a little bit different. Okay. So quick background. Like I mentioned, I'm going to talk about karma. Let me ask you this. Let me just throw it out. What does everyone think karma is? I mean, because you go on YouTube and all that, you say instant karma. You know, I think it's called instant karma, whatever, or it says karma. You know, like I don't know. And it talks about, you know, you see the immediate results of certain situations. You know, like car driving on the wrong lane, and then behind him then comes a police car, and that goes, yeah, you know, because the guy's driving the wrong lane, they call it, you know. But anyway, on YouTube there's a lot of bunch of things, but just to put it in perspective, to put it more, I guess, technical, karma is not fate or predestination. Karma is definitely not fate, F-A-T-E, or predestination. Okay, so does everyone understand that? You know, because sometimes we see situations happen, and, you know, a person gets, I don't know, mug, or a person gets sick. We say, oh, that's karma. There's a tendency that, in a way, we're using it not totally incorrectly, but we're also using it not totally correctly. Okay, so that's why in the social context today, karma sort of like gets, I don't know, used sometimes not necessarily 100% correctly. Okay, so here, based on definition, it's actually, yeah, the term karma actually literally means action, to do something. To do something, okay? But it's also to do something with intention, etc. Okay, so anyway, yeah, I was reading up on an article, some material actually from buddhanet.com, and they have there was a speaker there that really did a very good fundamental, he calls it, the title is called Fundamentals of Buddhism. That's pretty good. The printout that I have on the table called Karma is part of his talk. It's a 12-week class that he gave. It's very much like a lecture Liu giving classes, something like that. But it's done in, I don't know, I think it was done in English. And I read it, and it was, I thought it was pretty interesting. There's some areas that are a little bit off, but still, most of it was on track. Anyway, okay, so here, karma is based on intention and motivation behind action as direct consequence of the universal law of causality, leads to reincarnation, samsara, etc. Okay, well, it's besides, that is definitely a part of the consequence, but there's much more. Okay, so what kind of karmas are there? It could be good or bad. Because I'm going to go through this very briefly because I want to sort of like leave a fair amount of time to sort of like have Q&A, so to speak, because that's, I think, where we learn most. Okay, so it can be good or bad based on conditions of primary and secondary causes here. Primary and secondary cause just means the fact that, okay, how do you want to put this? Okay. This karma is very much associated, or is almost equivalent to what I mentioned earlier about dependent origination. Okay, dependent origination, and the term in here that I believe Ty was the one who did this. I like to use the word Gestalt. How do you say it? It's German. I know. Gestalt. Okay. Yeah, Gestalt really actually means a structure, a framework, or something. Okay, of which, in the context of karma, it just means the fact that, or in the general sense, it just means that if you add up all the parts of a whole, let's say you have a pie and you cut it up for the sake of argument, okay, and each of the components, each of the parts that make up the structure or the pie, if you analyze them each, and then you sum up all the, whatever you're summing up about all those things, they still do not make up the resultant whole. Okay, so an example that's used in one of the articles I was reading was saying like this. It goes, okay, if you have a candle and if you have oil, right, and if you have a match, okay, this is one way of looking at it. The fact that all three can produce a flame, right? You have oil and or a wick instead of a candle, doesn't matter, and the two of them can also result in having a flame, right? You light up the flame, okay. But if you were to analyze just the oil and the wick by itself, you don't necessarily get the flame. So having just the combination of those two components, you can have a third component, the flame. Okay, so looking at the oil and the wick completely, when it's lit, you see the flame as well. But when you look at individual components, you don't see the flame. So that's a sort of like a very simplified way of looking at this or understanding this Gestalt. Okay, so anyway, now getting back to the aspect of primary and secondary. Well, he used primary and secondary, which is fine. You can call it different names. Primary just means the fact that it has more. It has the. I guess you could say more percentage. I'll call it more percentage because I look at it from an engineering standpoint. It's like saying that, okay, you have something, a heap or a collection of something, and a certain percentage of something is, very high, like 75%. The other stuff is like 30, 25%. Okay, so in a way, primary and secondary is a little bit like that in the sense that there is a major factor, okay, a predominant factor that results in the particular karma, but there are also other conditions that make the karma what it is. Okay, now one part about the karma, definitely the consequences, as Lecturer Liu mentions, the fact that he says, until the conditions are ripe, or conditions are conducive, let's put it that way, to a karma or a consequence happening, then only then will it occur. If the conditions are not conducive, okay. Now here's a very strange. I don't know. I don't want to say it's funny, but it's an experience that I had. Okay, back when I was working, okay, I was driving home one day on a road, and as you know, the car has a speedometer, right? That reads the mileage, etc. Okay, now the Eastern tradition that you don't like the number 4, right? Yeah. So anyway, one day I was driving back. I noticed, oh my gosh, my speedometer was 44,443. Odometer, not speedometer, odometer. 44,000. Yeah, it's exactly 44,443. And I'm driving on the road. I go, and I happen to look at it. And then immediately what came into mind was saying, oh my gosh, I'm going to hit 44. I'm wondering what's going to happen. I don't want, maybe it's bad luck, right? I happened to be thinking about that too, which is kind of interesting. And then immediately when it hit 44, the next moment I knew I had a flat tire. I hit a nail.
Oh.
Incredible. It was incredible. I was right. I go, oh my gosh. Then I immediately pulled over, fixed the flat tire, and then, of course, I eventually drove home. But here's what's kind of interesting. The fact that or like you could say mentally, I had this thought, okay, and yet at the same time, I perceived a certain condition, a certain situation, the odometer reading. Okay, so the two of them somehow, let's put it this way. I was driving my own car, I admit, okay. In my whole life's experience of driving my personal car, I never had a flat due to a nail before. Never. When I was driving rental cars and all that, okay, yeah, or other people's car, yeah, sure, I have flats. In fact, I only have a couple flats in my life, actually. But that one was the only time.
You're more careful with your own car, but not with other cars.
Maybe. Okay, I'm willing to drive over different surfaces when I'm using rental cars, maybe. Okay, because I can say, that's not mine. No, but the point is that it was the only time when I'm driving my car that I actually had a flat. Only time in my whole life. And that was like, when I had that event happen, I said to myself, wow, that's kind of interesting. Because it was not anything major, but it happened to be like, it seems to me at that time was a coincidence to me. I go, wow, I was looking at my odometer and I was thinking about it and boom, something happened. Okay. All right. So anyway, the point is that those are what we call, or lecturer Liu talks about, like these conditions or circumstances that happen to be matured or ripe for the event to happen. Okay, so anyway, now it says does not necessarily mean fixed state or destiny, blah, blah, blah. Okay, our response is based on constantly changing. Okay, that just means the fact that I asked myself, if I had not been thinking about that something bad's going to happen, even though the odometer says 444, maybe nothing would happen. Possibly true, maybe. Or even if I thought something was going bad to happen, but it was not due to the perception or not perception, but the action of seeing my odometer reading, maybe nothing would happen also. Okay, so again, it's kind of interesting. Anyway, it's sort of like a thought experiment that I'm keeping. I sometimes have about those things. Okay.
Something.
Sure.
I listened to the lecture, and in the
Liu.
lecture it has to do with lecture Liu's
Oh, okay.
in Buddhism's idea that river, mountain is all in our mind, and actually he based this idea on the thoughts that I think it says that our DNA has some kind of influence over the chi on the outside.
Okay.
So when we have that thought, it kind of interacts with the reality, with the outside world. I guess that could
No,
be
it's possible.
an
Yeah.
explanation.
Yeah, it's possible. I mean, because according to science, biologically we create electric fields around our body. Sometimes they call it the aura. Aura? Is that how you aura? Aura? Okay. I mean, because in Russia, I don't know how many years ago, there's an article I read about the fact that there's it's called something photography, curling or something like curling. That's it. Excuse me, curling photography, where they take photographs of the human body or parts of the body or whatever, and once you look at the picture or the exposed film or whatever, they see that there's a sort of like they call it a glow. Yeah, they call it a glow around your physical body. Okay. Now, of course, science already knows the fact that we do generate a electric field around our body. Okay, that's only because of the fact that our bodies are made out of cells, which is made out of molecules, which is made out of atoms, and these things all generate etc. Okay. I don't want to get into too detail, but yeah, it's possible. It's possible. It's very, very possible.
Beyond the mind itself.
Generates, yeah.
Some other field.
Yeah. I mean, we generate what is called alpha, beta, even up to delta waves. Because when they do sleep research, they plug all these things in your probes on your head, and then they can whatever. And then also recently in science, besides and in science, of course, electric fields are related to what's called magnetic fields. They're interrelated. Okay, if you have electric field, you automatically have magnetic, and vice versa. Okay, so today the most recent research I heard is the fact that the ability to actually manipulate the brain, actually physically, well, I say physically, but physically through electromagnetic waves, okay, to alter your ability to do things with your brain, okay. And what they do is they say, okay, it's on PBS or whatever. But anyway, basically, they can create a very concentrated form of magnetic field or electric field, and they put that instrument over your head, and they say, okay, say something, count 1 through 10 or whatever, anything. And as they put the instrument over certain parts of your brain that's related to either speech or thought or whatever, your speech changes. Okay, but you're not aware of it necessarily. But when you hear it back, you realize it changed. Okay, because of the fact that the magnetic or electric fields that they were generating from the instrument actually, I don't want to say interrupt. You could say interrupts the way our brains function in terms of the firing of the neurons and the interaction between the synapses, they call it. Anyway, it affects your nerves. The way your nerves function. That's why you've heard about when the first microwaves came out. People say, "Oh, you don't want to stand close to the microwaves." Well, which there's some truth in that, by the way. For example, I remember when I was in college, we visited a what they call that, a repeater station, radio repeater station, or something like that. And it's a station where it received radio signals from other places and rebroadcasts them out in a very concentrated form towards certain places. Just like very much like cell phone cell towers today, similar. Okay, and basically, even though we learned that electromagnetic fields, it takes a lot of concentration to affect your body, but even the host who was showing us the station says, when we they do maintenance on their equipment, all that, they have to make sure that it definitely is not broadcasting. The radar transmitters are not broadcasting, because he says, no, you won't feel anything when you climb up there, but if there's a blast of radio waves passing through you, the power of those waves are very high. So if you do that a few times, over time, you'll find out you're beginning to have cancer, you're beginning to have different diseases, okay? Because it disrupts your cellular, I guess you could say, the molecules in your cells. Okay, so therefore it can create, I guess you could say, mutations. Okay, so definitely, you've heard about concern about people say, oh, putting cell phones to your head, it's no good for your brain or something like that. It technically, okay, from a scientific sense, any form of electromagnetic radiation, which radio waves fall into, just like X-rays or gamma rays or whatever that can kill you, high-power radiation, it does affect us. The question is the degree in which that can affect us is dependent upon the power or the signal, the power of the signal. Okay, so but anyway, so in that sense, as what this is just to digress from what Ms. Wong has talked about. Okay, but anyway, this is just a further description of what karma is. Okay, here it talks about dependent origination. Okay, that all phenomena every day do not come into existence on their own, but as a result of conditions, causes, when no single karma act is solely independent of other acts. Karma is a result of independence of all these things. Okay, basically we're talking about the fact that karma is nothing more than a mixture, if you will, okay, or a collection of conditions which allow for a consequence to occur. That's all. Okay, so, and because there's so many aspects of it, it doesn't mean that it won't occur. Like if the conditions are not 100%, it won't occur. But it depends upon what is primary and what is secondary, as mentioned earlier, about which is the emphasis, which is the predominant cause. Okay, So here it talks about the 12 links of dependent causation, which I'll get to in the bottom, but it just talks about the fact that, a lot of things begin with ignorance. Ignorance is sort of like the first one. But anyway, I'll get to that later. Okay, so karma, different types of karma we say. There's personal, or there's what we call group, collective. Okay. Personal just means that essentially the consequence or the effects occur with yourself, one person only. Okay, or actually in the I'll leave it at that. It's the fact that it is just occurring to yourself. The other is what collective, which just means a group of people, because because I don't want to say that personal is just you, but because if you are, if you're by yourself, isolated, okay, then I can say, yeah, it's just you. But if you are like you have a family or whatever, when something affects you, it affects what? Them too. Even though for them it's sort of like a byproduct or side effect of the karma affecting you. So it truly is never one person individually. Okay, but predominantly it is the fact that it is you, but it also affects influences those around you. Okay, so anyway, but collective here is a little bit different. Collective really means that actually the predominant karma is actually affecting more than just one individual. Let's put it that way. Okay. One case, an article that Ty gave me was about the fact that they said, transmitter was trying to respond to a question about people saying that, there was a group of people who went out, driving. This is in Taiwan, I believe, right? Okay, I believe the Guo. Yeah. And he says, they were, a group of people was going to propagate the Tao, whatever, so they all got in a van, and they were driving to whatever, and then they got into an accident and a lot of them got killed. Okay, and so the question posed to the transmitter was saying that, these people were cultivators, blah, 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 blah. They were trying to do Tao work, blah, 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 blah. How is it that they all died? Okay, and again, transmitter Go responded by saying that, it's a question of collective karma. Okay, we all have collective karma. Some of us have collective karma. Okay, examples I was reading when I was researching the karma aspect was saying that the lecturer posed the question. Okay, suppose you have a some conflict going on, and then you have a mob who fights against another mob or something or whatever. It doesn't matter. And the point is that as a mob, there's a group of people. So in that sense, whatever the actions they take, whatever results in a karma that affects all of them as a group, okay, as opposed to individual. So that's really the main difference. Okay. Heavy or serious? Okay. Okay. Fixed. Well, he calls it fixed. Okay. Serious or not? Okay. This the degree of karma. I call it the degree of seriousness of a karma. Okay. Does change. It can change. Okay. Because again, the consequences of a karma is a collection of. It's the gestalt. Okay, mentioned earlier, right? Gestalt is just a collection of all these things. Okay. The consequence is greater than again the whole. I admit, but the point is the fact that since this is a collection, okay, each of those factors that add to that consequence, okay, is affected by conditions of the present as well. The present, okay, because when lecturer Liu talks about karma, he mentions the fact that the consequence, the conditions must be right, but the conditions are of course the present condition, okay, and of course all the consequences of the past. All the karma, the causes that you created in the past. Okay, so the conditions of the present is also a very important factor, in my opinion, that affects whether the karma consequence takes place or not. Okay, so anyway, just the heavy or serious is just to let you know that if all things being equal, if you said, okay, this is a certain cause, it has a certain effect. Okay, all things being equal. The fixed or heavy seriousness just means that the effect is not predetermined. It changes. It can change. Okay, it could be more serious or less. Okay, and there's in the articles I was reading, basically talks about the fact that it has to do with the causation of the karma. Okay, and they describe it in two ways. I mean, in a very objective way. And one is to say that it is a combination of both the subject and the object, meaning the fact that the subject is the person creating karma, and the object is the person or thing receiving the action caused by the subject. Okay, so depending upon the subject's own, I guess you could say, seriousness of the cause, meaning the fact that do you have like, here it mentions about like murder as an example, where there's an intent to do something, okay? Besides the intention, the fact that there's also the idea of the fact that do you do this without regret, for example, okay? Or you also do this repeatedly. In other words, you have done it in the past and you probably will do it again in the future. Okay, so that's the subject part. The object part is the person receiving the action that's caused by the subject, meaning the fact that he's on the receiving end. Okay, is the person, for example, I mean the examples used in the articles reading saying was that person of the quality, they call it the qualitative nature of that object, meaning that was that person a good person? Was that person like a Buddha or Buddha, not a Buddha, but yeah, they used the word Buddha, but meaning the fact that was that person a very honorable person, very virtuous person, etc., or a very bad person? Okay, and also there's one other aspect I'm trying to remember. Oh gosh, okay, I can't remember. I forget. The reason why they have this is because it comes from a question posed by some people. They say, okay, we all know there was World War II, and in Europe there was Hitler and all that stuff, and Hitler made some decisions to kill a lot of people, right? Okay, so one question was posed is, if you knew what Hitler would do in the future, during the time of the rise of Hitler, would you have killed him if you had the chance, or would you have to stop him some way by killing him or doing whatever? That was a question. If you knew what would happen, he would do in the future, right? So that's really creates a very moral dilemma. Do you kill evil, what you think will be perceived evil in the future, or do you do something else? See? So in other words, go ahead.
I have something smaller example.
Okay.
The mosquito.
Yeah.
So do we kill the mosquito because it carries disease?
Right. Yeah, that's another. Yeah.
Tinier.
Yeah.
Still.
Well, to answer that, I can only give you a experience or a talk that I had with another lecturer at that time. He's now a transmitter, but when I went to Malaysia to do a Dharma class, okay, Malaysia has a lot of mosquitoes. It's hot and humid, and so we were concerned about that, having come from the U.S. And he says, well, he said he related his experience he once had. He says, oh, I used to because he lives in Taiwan, I used to swat mosquitoes all the time, he says, all the time, because there's so many mosquitoes in Taiwan. And then later he says, he changed. He says, no, I don't kill them anymore. I just sort of shoo them away. Okay, which is I mean, if the mosquitoes are always there, you're constantly shooing it away, which is true, he says. And he doesn't try to kill mosquitoes intentionally with the thought of, there's a mosquito, I see a mosquito, I gotta hit it. He doesn't do that anymore. I said, so I asked why. He goes, well, what happened was that when I first was swapping mosquitoes left and right, later on I got a illness that resulted in red dimples all over his face. I don't know what that is. I don't think it's smallpox or anything like that. But then when he got that, when he was ill during that time, he thought about all the mosquitoes that he killed. When you're swatting mosquitoes, because they give you little bumps and whatever. And so he goes, maybe I shouldn't be doing that. So he stopped doing that. And of course, later on when he got well, that's fine. And after that, he never really got that problem again. And he also never started intentionally killing mosquitoes. Okay, so, I mean, let me give you a personal experience. when I first went to California, at the temple host's house, there were ants. I mean, they were just ants, many ants. And I said, oh man, it's in my bedroom, it's in the house, it's in the hallway. I said, oh man, let me see if I can get rid of them. Okay. So I intentionally made sure that, I try to find a way to try to get rid of them. Okay. And it probably killed them more than whatever, because I started using like camphor first. You know what camphor is, right? Stuff you put in your closets to keep the moths away.
Oh.
Those things are poisonous, by the way. To even humans, if you constantly breathe it, of course. But so I decided to put camphor all over the place. Where the ants are tracking, whatever. And yeah, over time, many ants die. I admit that, and I sweep them up, and I said, oh, good, no more ants. Okay, so that's what I thought. Okay, anyway, and then when we moved out of the house, when we got a new house, no, it was still at that house. And then later on, I found that you could use like baby powder or whatever they don't like powder or something like that. Okay, all right, so it went on for a while, but then after we moved out there, even though I see other ants later on, I decided and I saw less ants, so I didn't really think about it anymore. Okay. Now, in one of the only Dharma class that we had at California at Yulin Fuyan, right? Teacher was having conversations with everybody, blah, blah, blah. At that time, it was still a lecture. And so, teachers, we should not be, we should not have this intention of trying to harm things, right? And then the teacher, as she was walking by, she said to me, like, when you try to do things with the ants. I was like surprised. I go, whoa, okay. I guess, I'm guilty, I admit, I guess she saw me what I was doing. But the point is that, yeah, it is true that we should not have an intention. That aspect is true, okay? Because when you do create and have an intention, and you create an act from that intention, you do definitely create karma, okay? And it's some people call it bad karma or unwholesome karma, depending on how you want to describe it. But it's karma that's unwholesome or not good, in our sense, okay? So, if, for example, you have, you accident, without thinking, maybe you just happen to hit your arm and a mosquito just happened to be in the way and got killed. Okay, in that sense, it is unintentional. So that intention is really not there. Okay, yes, you did kill something, a sentient being according to Buddha, right? A mosquito sentient, correct? So you did, but the act was unintentional. Okay, now, in some Buddhist interpretations, they would say, oh, that really is not karma. That does not create karma. Okay. I see it a little bit different. It still is karma, but nevertheless, the degree of this consequence will be different. The degree. Okay. So that's why the Buddhism, when they talk about karma, they talk about subject and object. The degree. If you intend to do something, you do it without regret, or you do it repeatedly. Okay, that's different from, oh, I accidentally did something. Okay, many of us vegetarians, right? Oh, it has egg in this? Why you didn't tell me first? Or it's made of something, whatever. Why didn't you tell me? So those are unintentional. Okay, but nevertheless, yeah, to a certain extent, if you want to strictly stand by the law of the vow, hey, you broke the law, you broke the vow, right? But again, sure, it's true that you did, but it's also a different degree in which you did it. We may say, some of us vegetarians may say, I'm a vegetarian, but you know what? I'm going to eat a lot of su liao, or vegetarian meat products. Okay, and because you have a desire to want to, why is it that you want to do that? In a way, because you have a desire for what? The original representation of those foods. So then that's different, because you still have that desire to want to eat certain things. Okay, so anyway, so that's the degree part. Neutral, basically neutral is, it's a little bit related to unintentional. But here he talks about, okay, Mahakasyapa's tendency to shake. Okay, now Okay, I admit I don't know that story about when he was a monkey. Okay, okay, okay. And then Arhat Gavampati, Lord of Cattle, was that's the literal translation of his name, right? Okay, who happened to regurgitate? Wow, you could do that. I guess you could regurgitate as a person, regurgitate your food. Okay, because he happened to be an ox in many previous lives. Okay, so I mean, the articles I read about the fact that okay, if you're sleeping, you're breathing. Those are neutral karma. Okay. Now, neutral in the sense that they say it's not to say that. Well, they say it doesn't really have an effect or consequence. Yeah, I guess you could say that. I see it as the fact that yes, there is still a consequence because an event happened. Okay, like unintentionally hitting and killing a mosquito or that. But it's just that this is a personal opinion that yes, you still have to reap its consequence. But the consequence is so, I don't know, minor. You know, it's very much like saying, you know, maybe I don't know, maybe one day as you're walking, you stub your toe. You know, you hit your toe on a piece of sidewalk that's different height, and then you go, ouch! You know, it hurts. But because you may ask, oh man, what did I do before? Did I kick pig or did I kick some animal? And now maybe something very minor. The point is that there's still a consequence, but I think it's so subtle and minor that we don't consider it sometimes a consequence. Okay. Wholesome karma, unwholesome karma, good or bad. Okay, just again, here he talks about action document without any motivation based on our wisdom. Well, yeah, I guess you could. That's part of it. I will put it that way because wholesome karma can still be karma that you created with motivation. Okay. After all, you have an intent. Okay. Good example is like what we're doing in cultivation. Okay. What do? We say, oh, you can have merits and all that stuff. Well, so now that you know that we have to do things to acquire merits, okay, you know it now. You physically, you actually have that knowledge to know. That is what? Intention already. That is already intention. You're creating intention. Okay. So unwholesome karma, okay, through greed, ill will, ignorance, two types that are evil by nature and those that are violent and oath. Okay, again, that's just bad karma in the grand sense of, like I mentioned earlier, about intention and also repeating the action, maybe, etc. Okay. Law of cause and effect. Okay, the universal law. Okay, yeah. Even in science, we say. Newton when he said that, okay, for every action there's an opposite and equal reaction in science, okay, and that pretty much is true. A sidetrack on this, if you truly understand karma, okay, because I was thinking about during my college days, I heard a story, okay, and the story was that there was this student who was so good in physics, that in the final exam and all that stuff, you're allowed to have a they call it a cheat sheet, a crib sheet or whatever, where you can write formulas and all that stuff. Okay, so all the students, many students are writing all the formulas they think will occur, they need to do problems that will occur on the test. And this student, according to the story, says all he wrote was one equation. And the only equation he wrote on the crib sheet was, literally was F equals ma. Okay, in physics it just means force equals mass times acceleration. Okay, that just means Newton's second law. For every force, there's the action. Well, Newton had three laws. One is about inertia, one is about force, etc. Okay, but if you really look at physics, the word physics, okay, it's talking about anything that's action and motion, right? The truth is, yeah, every equation that eventually comes out of it, no matter what kind of equation you have, to find solutions for problems, all derives from F equals ma, the principle of F equals ma. If you understand the principle of that equation, you know how to solve every problem. And that was the story about that student. I go, oh wow, really? Okay, so in this sense, okay, just like in physics, I mentioned F equals, there's certain laws. Universal, the cause and effect itself is a universal law. Okay, now, neutral, unbiased, fair, impartial. Yes, that's true. It governs all things, not limited by space or time. Okay, and limited by space or time just really relates to the fact that when we reap the consequences of karma, of course, it doesn't necessarily occur immediately. That's why they say karma, they say it's not limited by time. They say it is latent or sometimes immediate. Immediate karma, yeah, we can understand, we see it happening. Latent karma, we don't know because it could be many lifetimes later. Okay, so that's what that is. Okay. Okay. Here basically talks about the fact that how cause and effect, or cause and result, is related or is circular. It's not sequential. Okay, there's a tendency to think, okay, there's a cause, there's an effect, the sequence of events that occur. Okay, in the universal law of cause and effect, because of the conditions that result in a consequence, okay, those things also can be a cause for the next consequence. Okay, so that's basically what this is talking about. Okay, so consequence encompasses the sea of results, and results extend back through the causal sources. Okay, so it's really cyclic. It's not really necessarily a start and an end. We like to think of it as start and end because, you know, especially when we are the recipient of consequences, we like to say, oh, it's over. You know, it won't happen again, whatever, or nothing related to this consequence will happen again. Not necessarily true. Okay, not necessarily so. Okay. Okay, interdependence and interconnectedness of all phenomena. Okay, basically just saying the same thing, that everything's related. I mentioned here Indra, I believe that's how you pronounce it. Indra's net. Yeah, it's a Hindu mythology, or I don't know if it's mythology or anthology, but anyway, it talks about the fact that there was a king who had a craftsman who built this beautiful netting. Okay, but this netting is like I think he built it like in a three-dimensional form. Okay, instead of just a flat sheet, it's three-dimensional. And in the joint, in the interconnection of every thread, he put a jewel there. And from the jewel, you can see that if you were just to look at one jewel, you see that it reflects all the other jewels, because you know every interconnection is a jewel. Okay, a bright diamond or whatever. Okay, and even though you see the reflections of other diamonds or jewels, you can also see that the reflected jewels themselves are also reflecting all the others. So it just means that how everything's interconnected. That's all. That's all it means. Okay.
Well, that's just like the previous one, just the beginning and end. It's all related to the primary and secondary, or direct, indirect causes, whatever. Because one, just like the first example you're saying, you were thinking,
right,
about the 444 or whatever, and then
yeah, the odometer reading.
Yeah, so the problem is it's hard to say pinpoint what is the cause. There is no one cause.
There's no one cause.
So they're all related. They're all causes.
Right.
And so it's hard to distinguish that.
Yeah.
And so
yeah. So if you were to take like that, what Ty just talked about, my thought about something bad's going to happen, or my seeing the odometer. Okay. If I was to say, okay, what do you think is the primary and what do you think is secondary?
Your thought.
Is the primary?
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody disagree?
you can't say.
Yeah. Yeah. The truth is, yeah. Personally, I don't know what it is. But yeah, sure, you could say it doesn't matter what you say. Either one, it could be true or it may not be true. We don't know. Okay. The answer is we don't really know. Okay. But it's definitely, in my opinion, a combination of that, the both, it included both, plus any other factor, some other factor. I happened to be driving the wrong lane, or, because I wanted to go a little fast, so I went to the left lane, for example. But that, you may think, it has nothing to do with it. You just want to go fast. Maybe you want to pass a car, whatever. Okay. So there are many, things that we can say that for sure. I can say for sure, oh, definitely there was the odometer reading and my thoughts. But there could be other causes like, oh, okay, subconsciously I decided to go fast and therefore I was on the left lane, for example. Okay, so anyway. Okay. Here it just says, if you want to know the past, look at your present. If you want to know the future, look at your present. Okay, yeah, that's a simple way of describing it, but of course, your past can also affect your future. It may not be affecting you now. So again, but he just did it in a very simplified way to say, yeah, look, you're present, etc. Okay. Now there's 3 types of obstacles to opportunity, and this is important. Afflictions, retribution, and karma. Karma is the most dangerous. Okay. Yeah, I guess you could say that. Okay. 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 I'm going to talk this a little later. Okay. Because when I get into the Q&A aspect. Okay. Okay. A phrase here: enlightened beings fear causes, while humans fear consequences. Okay. Only because of the fact that enlightened beings understand that there are consequences, or know that there are consequences because they're enlightened to that. We humans are dumb. Well, I don't want to say dumb, but don't see that. Don't see the fact that there's a relationship between cause and effect, or even things that are what I call causes and things what I call consequences. We're ignorant of that. Let's put it that way. That's why ignorance is one of the greatest, the basic problem that we have. Okay, so it's because we don't see that. So that's why we say humans fear consequences, because we only fear consequences because when it happens to us, we get excited and we realize that, oh, okay, something's happening. Okay. Okay, these are just examples, which what I really don't want to go into because I don't have time. Okay. Okay, but the gist of it is saying that even though there's karma, it doesn't mean that you can't change it, or you can't change one's the effect of those consequences. Let's put it that way. Okay, there are so many examples. The easy example I can tell you is just to use Liao Fang's 4 stories or 4 lessons. That's an example. Okay, very good example. But there are many others. Okay, so that's just the gist of it. Because the reason why is because there are many people today who goes to fortune telling, right? Why are we interested in fortune telling? Oh, because we want to know the future, etc. And so therefore, if we think that there's something bad, we want to try to do things to avoid it, etc. Okay, but even though it is true that, and by the way, some fortune telling, I don't know, but some fortune telling are really accurate. So a good example is when I was working, my boss. I may have mentioned this before. He went with our representative to Hong Kong on a business trip, and decided to go to a fortune teller. The fortune teller was blind. Okay, and so he had my boss, my CEO, said he mentioned something. It was his birthday or something, and then something other, some little minor information. Okay, and then the fortune teller said, okay, there was a certain incident that you had when you were a certain kid with your teacher or whatever, and also he had a injury to his skull when he was also in his youth, maybe 20s or whatever. Both were true. Now this guy is blind, and the information he received was, I think, his birthday, his date of his birth, and there was some other.
The hour.
Yeah. It's very specific. Yeah. It has something very specific. And but anyway, I have to say, not all the fortune tellers require the same information, but most do probably. Okay, but anyway, so my boss was like totally shocked. A blind guy just giving that information tells him what had happened in his past. He did. The only difference is that he didn't tell him what would happen in the future, but he was able to literally read his past, which is like incredible for my boss. It was incredible.
One teacher said that we all have that kind of power in us, but it just some are more acute, some are more.
Yeah.
What is the obtuse?
Obtuse. Yeah, obtuse. Right, obtuse. Yeah.
During cultivation, one can.
You're right. You're absolutely right about that.
Power.
You're right. Look at the example of Buddha and his disciples. Because the fact that Buddha was able to look at his own past when he became blind, whatever, that is why today we know, he said, oh, he was a human sometimes, and he was an animal, right? Different animals, different times. And then he was also able to predict some of why certain things happened to his disciples, because he saw their past. Yeah, so yes. I think Kai will mention that, if you really get to a certain level, blah, 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 you can see the past, future, whatever. Okay, anyway, all right. Yeah, I don't know about the story of the old monk and the young boy, so I'll skip that. Yes. Okay. All right. Overcoming karma. That's important. Okay. Because if we can truly understand what karma is, you then have an understanding of what you yourself should be careful about, where you should be careful about. Okay. And so there, in a way, that also affects your cultivation. Okay. Now, in the Tao, we talk about gongde, which is merit, virtuous merit, and fude, which is sort of like, how would you translate that? Blessings? We call it blessing. Material blessings or whatever. It was, yeah. It's it isn't just material. It could be conditions too. Because you may have a very happy life, for example. You may not have wealth, but you will be happy. So okay. Yeah. Honestly, I have a slightly, not different view, but a side view of it, so to speak, and that's going to take a long time, so I'm not going to go into it. But yes, in the Tao, yes, we do encourage the performance and the practice of obtaining virtuous merit. Okay, because in a way we do say that it can try to offset some karma, etc. But some karma cannot be offset. But the important thing is that we do our best. But really, when we cultivate and we need to make sure that, gosh, this is going to be a long thing. So put it short. Just because you understand the fact that virtuous merit can try to offset bad or negative previous karma, okay, the emphasis is not on that when you're trying to cultivate, okay, or even in the action of perform, or even in the performance of the karma, the deeds. That's not the emphasis. The emphasis of us to practice action, to do good deeds and all that, is to make us realize, or to actually help us realize the fact that we do have our Buddha. Okay, we have a Buddha nature, and that it is what? It should be natural, quote unquote, natural for us in doing those things. We don't do things because we see a benefit out of it. Let's put that. We should not be seeing it as something that we get a benefit out of it. Okay, all right. Even though we say to ourselves, "Oh no, I'm not thinking about the benefit," but subconsciously you're doing it for some reason. Okay. So anyway, but that's another whole thing, that whole big ball that I don't want to get into now. Okay. Now in Buddhism, it talks about the Eightfold Paths, the six paramitas. Okay, the Eightfold Path comes from what? The Four Noble Truths, right? Because from as a consequence of Four Noble Truths, he says, because the last one was what? There's a path through which we can what? Cease this suffering, right? There's a path by which we can lead a life that we can lead that will see this path, and that's what he calls the Eightfold Path, which just means a more detailed description of how one should cultivate. Okay, and the sixth paramita, again, it's also part of that. Okay, it's not part of the Eightfold Path, but it's the fact that it is also a method by which we can help ourselves cultivate. Okay, I think in itself it's a class, the Eightfold Path and the sixth paramita, so I will skip that. Okay, all right. Aim cultivating with the comment that by stopping the virtue is better and to prevent future good by not having single thought attachment rights. Okay, yeah, that's true. But as I mentioned before, you can read it for yourself. That's why. Okay, it's true. But as I mentioned, the emphasis is not because you can prevent future karmas. Really, technically, okay. And then of course letting go. That's fine. So there's certain emphasis I like to get into, but it's a whole topic in itself. Okay, so okay. And then in conclusion, okay, we just said, it is something we practice and all that stuff. Now, the last thing I want to mention is just the vows, because that was not in this. Again, vows are important only because it's also part of a process that we use to try to motivate ourselves to try to what? Stay on track. That's really what vows are, okay? And the process of which we're trying to stay on track is the track of, assuming in this case, the Eightfold Path, for example, or whatever path we're taking. Okay, so we do have vows. Now, of course, our vows are a little bit different from Buddhist vows. Okay, but the point is that vows have the same meaning. The idea is to try to help us keep on track. Now, an important thing about the most important thing actually about the vows is what? Anybody know? Is what? What's the most important things about making vows?
This is direction.
Okay, yeah. Really, the most important thing is true sincerity. Okay, because because you can make vows. That's true, as many as you want. But if you're sort of like iffy about the sincere, you're not 100% or 110% if sincere about it. Honestly, even though you've made that vow, it's not going to stay with you all the time. That's the problem. Okay, you end up not necessarily completely breaking the vows, but not necessarily being as diligent as you should be. So, and true sincerity is really hard to come by when you're making vows. Okay, when we receive the Tao, well, it goes 全心报守. Okay, right? So you have to be truly, okay, and true sincerity in itself, honestly, I find it very difficult to try to describe, but at the same time, hard to try to quantify. Quantify meaning how to say, oh, this is, if you do this is true sincerity. No, unfortunately, true sincerity, the only way you can tell if you're truly sincere is time. Just like Buddha talks about when consequences of karma appear, it's time. So anyway, let me finish up by saying that, here. They just finished, right? Or they're in break?
Break.
Okay, we ended at 11:30, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm 4 minutes over. Okay, so anyway, again, to talk about karma, it's really in depth. I mean, I just did a superficial lecture about it, and honestly, after researching a lot about this karma stuff, I find it very interesting, and also it actually motivated me to know, to try to find out more. So, or what is said about it. But I think an important thing is that regardless of what you're researching or learning, it's important to try to understand what you're researching and learning. Okay, so anyway, if I have said anything incorrect, I hope the Buddhists and saints will forgive me. And if anyone can, if I've said, again, due to my saying things incorrectly, hopefully all of you can also correct me if I'm wrong. Okay, I thank the grace of heaven and the virtual masters that I have this opportunity to present this class, and I hope all of you will continue to cultivate. Thank you.